Well, hello and welcome to my latest video. Back in the garage. No hat, so not an unboxing, but I thought I'd do another one in my series, quite useful series I think, which is advice for the new cyclist. So you could be a new cyclist, or you could be somebody who's returning to cycling, perhaps after some time in a, I don't know, mental institution or an old people's home or something like that, at school. Perhaps you've been detained at Her Majesty's pleasure and not had the opportunity to get out on your bike, and you think, well, I want to get back out on the bike, but there's a few things I'm not entirely clear of, and that is what Julian's advice for the new cyclist is all about. And I thought what we'd do today is, let's say you've bought some new cycling shoes, okay, and those shoes are what's the word, closed, tightened, affixed, secured to your feet by means of what's called a BOA dial. And you're thinking to yourself, how do I use a BOA dial? Well, my friends, this video is for you, because I'm going to explain just exactly what is a BOA dial and how to use it effectively. Now, this is a cycling shoe, in case you're not certain. It's using SPD style mountain bike cleats, but that isn't germane to the operation of the BOA dial. This thing that you can see here at the front, this is not a BOA dial, let's be clear about that. This is just a Velcro strap, and there is a separate video about how to use a Velcro strap. No, the BOA dial is this particular thing here, okay? And the reason it's called a BOA dial is because it's named after the snake, which you may have heard of, called the boa constrictor. And the way that the boa constrictor lives its life, secures, kills its prey in the wild, or presumably in zoos, is that it wraps itself around, it kind of curls itself around the offending item. And let's say that's a, oh, I don't know, an impala or a lesser cabinet minister. And then it wraps itself around, and then it tightens. So it kind of squeezes like that. And then it's squeezed all the life out of that cabinet minister, so they get a position on the front bench. And then the boa constrictor eats its prey, or dinner, as our zoologists call it. So the BOA dial operates in the same way. It tightens and it loosens. Incidentally, I went to the London Zoo once, and I was watching a boa constrictor. And what happened, and this was very unfortunate actually, one of the zookeepers got into the kind of enclosure or the cage with the boa constrictor. It was not very nice to watch actually. And the boa constrictor kind of leapt on it, if you can imagine a snake kind of leaping onto a zookeeper. And it started to wrap itself around the zookeeper's feet, okay? So around the sort of feet and the ankles. And then it started to tighten and tighten and tighten. Obviously, the zookeeper was making some horrible noises, and it really quite upset the children. Actually, you could have, saved. There was no need for these kind of screams and shouts and so forth. There was a lot of elderly people there who were quite upset by the sound. Anyway, the boa constrictor squeezed all the life out of this poor zookeeper, and then, horror of horrors, started to eat the zookeeper, starting from the head. So if you can imagine, the boa constrictor opened its mouth quite wide, quite a big mouth actually, and then it started to eat from the head, and then it ate kind of down the body and down the legs and so on and so forth. And then the extraordinary thing was, of course, the boa constrictor was still wrapped around the zookeeper's feet and bottom part of their legs. And obviously the boa constrictor didn't realise this. So once he'd finished, or she, may have been a she, not a bit difficult to tell, how do you sex a boa constrictor anyway? So once he'd finished eating the zookeeper, whose name was Henry, by the way, not that's important to the story, but it was, these people like to be remembered. So once he'd finished eating, or she had finished eating Henry, it started to eat itself. And this was the extraordinary thing, that the boa constrictor sort of started to eat, its tail, and then it ate its body, and finally it ate the whole thing. and there was nothing left except the except Henry's ID badge. Anyway, so the point about the story is the BOA dial, okay, which is this thing here. You put your foot into the shoe, okay, and I don't think I need to kind of demonstrate that, but let's imagine that my arm, okay, my right arm here is my foot, so it's gone into the shoe, and now I want to tighten it up. So I push in. Did you hear that click? Do you hear that telltale click? The click comes from that's what happens when the boa constrictor snake actually secures itself to the person's foot. And then I tighten. Can you hear that? Can you hear that? Click, click, click. So it's tightening, it's tightening, it's tightening. Oh, my foot is getting ready to. So this is what's tightening the shoe onto your foot. Do you see what I mean? It's getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter, just like a boa constrictor would. And the advantage of the BOA dial is that it gives you very small adjustments. Okay, so you can have it tight, a little bit tight, a little bit tight, a little bit tight, a little bit tight, fairly tight, fairly tight, fairly tight, quite tight, quite tight. Oh, that's very tight, if you can imagine that. And when you want to take the shoe off, right, you kind of pull it like that. Did you hear that click? Did you hear that click? And then it just kind of opens up. You see, let me just sort of do it. I can open up there. Can you see that? I've opened it up there. So it's undoing these kind of wires. Do you see these kind of wires here? And that's how it untightens or tightens the shoe on your foot. So let's just demonstrate again. I'm going to push it in. Did you hear that click? And now I'm going to turn it. Can you hear that clicking? And you can maybe see the wires. See these wires here? And the closure, see the closure mechanism here of the shoe, closing and closing, 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 closing. And if you imagine your foot is Henry, remember Henry, the zookeeper who got eaten by the boa constrictor on that particular unfortunate occasion when I went to London Zoo. I haven't been back to London Zoo for obvious reasons. And that's it. That's how you use a BOA dial on a cycling shoe. And if you're interested, because you think, well, that's a rather nice pair of shoes, Julian, these are in fact Physic, F-I-Z-I-K, Physic shoes. And this particular make, I don't know if you can see part of the Physic in there. It's kind of worn away by my sweat-drenched feet. And these are Physic Terra, T-E-R-R-A, not T-E-R-R-O-R, which is pretty much what happened to poor Henry when he got eaten by the boa constrictor. These are T-E-R-R-A, Physic Terra cycling shoes. And I must say, actually, I think I've done a separate video on unboxing of these shoes. These are my go-to shoes. They are actually my only pair of shoes, but they are my go-to shoes, and I really like them. So if you have any plans to go to, I suggest you get a pair of Physic Terra shoes with the BOA dial, and if you watch this video, then you'll know how to close the shoes. I'd like to finish this video by dedicating this particular video to Henry, the zookeeper at London Zoo, who unfortunately lost his life. So let's just observe a moment's silence. Well, that was enough really, because I didn't know Henry particularly well, so I think perhaps 7 seconds rather than a minute would be appropriate. I mean, for a monarch, you know, a great monarch, you might observe, I don't know, a month's silence, something like that. But for a minor zookeeper, obviously, you know, popular with his family and friends and so forth, but not otherwise particularly important in the great scheme of things, I'm thinking 7 seconds, maybe even 4 seconds actually. Should we make it 4 seconds? Let's make it 4 seconds. 1, 2, well, obviously that kind of destroys the silence, doesn't it? So just count amongst yourself. Count up to 4. That's it. I maybe gave him 5, but he was quite a nice fella. So thanks for watching, and advice for the new cyclist: keep watching. Well, don't keep watching, but look out for the next video. Maybe consider subscribing, clicking the notification bell, and then the next time I do a video about, for example, how to use a Velcro strap, you'll be told and you'll be able to watch it. So thanks for watching. See you next time.